Now, with an allocation of $7.453 billion, education and training has commanded the largest allocation of this country's budget. Minister of Education Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly joins us virtually to discuss how this allocation will be spent. Dr. Gadsby-Dolly, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning. Good morning to all your viewers, listeners.
Now, Minister, I know that the digital transformation plan for 2022 to 2027 has been approved by Cabinet. Based on the press release that was sent out, it consists of 13 segments, and of course, one of them would be the rollout of the CXC exams for January. I wanted to know how much this is going to cost now that the ministry has gotten its allocation, and how is it going to be rolled out? Is it that after we see the rollout in January, we're going to see the other 13, or have they been rolled out already?
The digital transformation program, quite a few of the projects are ongoing. So the e-testing that is being piloted in January is an extension of the actual e-testing that goes on now. So there are a couple of subjects from CXC that we use e-testing for now, but we plan to expand that, and that's why the pilot is happening in January. And the normal fees applicable to CXC are the fees that will apply to the pilot that is taking place in January. In fact, to accommodate this e-exam, more of the e-examinations for the paper one subjects, CXC has adjusted the syllabus so that we have a longer time of the January exam to ensure that we can cover all of the e-papers. So the major investment really would be in the devices. And of course, the schools have been resourced, the schools that have been chosen by the districts, 2 schools per district at least, they have been resourced with devices so that if the students' devices are not being used, the school can accommodate the students. So it's no great extra cost at this time. The ongoing projects would be the ebook procurement, the numeracy solution procurement. You would have seen the SEA online portal being rolled out. So quite a few of the digital transformation projects are being rolled out. The optimization of the school learning management system, the resourcing of the ministry with staff in the educational technology unit, a new unit that has been developed, that has been done and is continuing. So the digitization of student records on the school management system, all of that is ongoing at this time.
Right. And Minister, do you have an approximate cost? Like I know you just said it's not going to be anything additional, but do you have an approximate cost in terms of how much this is going to cost?
In terms of CXC examinations themselves, the ministry spends quite a lot of money on examinations. We have fees to CXC that would be in the region of about 11 million per year, and that's just the fee that we pay as a country. And then, of course, there are the fees for the examinations, the hiring of invigilators, the movement of examination papers from that we import, and then of course the export of examination papers. And so the conduct of CXC examinations can carry us up into close to 100 million, give or take, per year.
Okay. Per year. Okay. Now, when we think of education, because the allocation is for education and training, and so when we think of training, is there any sort of consideration for teachers to be trained in this fiscal year? And also on that note, in terms of retooling teachers, and as far as even promotion goes for those teachers who need to move up in the ranks?
Well, the Ministry of Education usually has a robust teacher training program. And this year, what we have done is that we have pulled everything together that's going to be done for term one. And that will soon be published for teachers this week, as a matter of fact, so that they can see exactly what trainings are coming up and how they can plan to be a part of the trainings. Because we want to have a more systematic approach to the teachers being able to choose what trainings they want to be offered and how they want to partake in that. With respect to promotional training, the ministry has collaborated with UB for many years, and it has been expanded to USC and so on the DPED, the postgraduate diploma in education, that teachers usually would is an in-service training, and they would usually enroll in this, apply for it, and once selected, they would use that, and that is the training that is required to be promoted to head of department and so on. So that is ongoing for this academic year as well.
And Minister, as we discussed the digital age, so we have these students going back out to schools. We also have the devices that's also going to be helping these students. But one of the things I didn't hear mentioned a lot was that focus on special needs. The students in the classroom who have that learning disability, will any consideration be given for them in this fiscal year?
Every fiscal year, that is a part of the budget. The Student Support Services Division was established specifically to deal with those students, to ensure that we have staffing to accommodate the needs. We have over 700 staff in that unit when you take into consideration the school social workers, the guidance counselors, because special needs, of course, deals with students who have disabilities, learning disabilities, as well as psychosocial issues. So it's broader than just the category of students that we always think about. So there are also student aides, and those student aides are specifically assigned to students who have disabilities, physical disabilities, as well as learning disabilities. We have over 400 student aides, and we require more. We have partnered with the OJT to be able to supply more aides as we go in, because there's an increasing demand for student assessment, for student aides. And so that's one of the areas that we are working on, to increase the number of staff that are actually on the ground to help our students. And as a matter of fact, you'd have seen $50 million allocated in this budget this year for remedial education. And a part of that is ensuring that we get on more persons to interact directly with the students who need the help, the special needs students. That includes all the wide range of special needs.
Right. And I like that you mentioned the remedial classes, because that was actually one of my questions. With the remedial classes, yes, we're going to be targeting those students with the special needs, but also is it also going to only focus on the students for the SEA, or those who are moving up from Form 1 to Form 2 with that new proficiency exam that was introduced, or are there other things that is going to be considered with this $50 million allocation?
There are quite a number of things that we would like to include under this allocation. It is the vacation revision programs, and the report of that program is going to go to Cabinet in the next 2 weeks, and a decision will be made based on the recommendations of the principals as to whether we broaden it or whether we keep it as what it was, which would be students transitioning from primary into secondary school. With respect to that 50 million, though, there are a number of things that are being implemented in 26 schools that it will assist us in funding, as well as it will be applied to be looking at about 25 to 30 primary schools which feed the secondary schools and need that level of attention. So one of the areas would be human resource in terms of support officers dedicated to the schools to help our students. We've been visiting schools, and one of the things that principals have been saying is that psychosocial support for the students is even more important and critical now after the COVID, because a lot of them are having problems to transition back to the classroom, despite the efforts of the existing cadre of school social workers and guidance counselors. So hiring some more staff to deal specifically with the schools, ensuring putting training in place, the positive behavior management and encouragement, those are the strategies that we want to focus on. And teacher training, of course. We want to look at parental programs and community programs, because the principals have said to us that even though you do things in the school, we need to target the parents, and some of the parents who you don't see. We need to target the communities, because when the students leave school, sometimes they lose what they have learned in the school because they go back into the communities. So reaching out from the school into the community, targeting the parents, targeting the psychosocial development of the students, bringing persons into the school to speak to the students, to inspire, motivate them, targeting student support personnel into the schools, looking at educational materials for the schools. All of this is a part of what we are intending to do using that 50 million, and that's just a snapshot of it.
Right. And on the other side, there was another 50 million that was allocated for the adjustment of the gate criteria. Do you think that's going to be enough, or are you seeing maybe going back to cabinet when the mid-year budget review comes for an additional supplement?
Based on what the trends over the years and the data over the years, the 50 million should be sufficient to cover the additional students who would now have the ability to apply for their baccalaureate certification. But certainly, we will see how that goes, because we would have to give some more guidelines to persons with respect to applying for that. And that should be available by the end of this week, early next week, some clear guidelines as to exactly how that is to be applied, so that the citizens and the public would be clear, and they'll be able to make their plans with respect to completing their bachelor's degrees.
And Minister, what other projects are there in the pipeline that we can look forward to with this allocation?
The projects, I think, the main projects have already been planned and are being implemented. So the allocation will be used to further fund the progress of these projects over the next year. A main thing is the supply of more digital devices to the schools. What would have happened in 2020 with the closure of schools? A lot of the devices that were lodged at the schools that would have been a part of the e-testing program, they were distributed from secondary schools into primary schools to teachers and so. So we now have to replace that bulk of computers, and we have been given the allocation in this year's budget to do that. And we're also going to be, of course, looking at some more purchase of devices for students whose parents can't afford and need assistance in supplying devices to them, ensuring that the e-classroom gets up and we have our e-classrooms running on a phased basis. We may not have all running at the same time, but certainly we're making great progress in getting those e-classrooms up, completing the digitizing of the student records. Those things are critical because that's the fundamental basis upon which we shall be able to make the strides in digital transformation at the ministry. So one of our main areas of focus would be digital transformation, and the budget will allow us to go forward with that because that will be the nexus of a lot of the different improvements that we require across the Ministry of Education.
Right. Now, Minister, one of the conversations that came up, especially as we celebrated our 60th year of anniversary, was the lack of, I would say, sort of cultural and historical context in the schools as it relates to the curriculum. Moving forward, is the ministry looking at changing the curriculum to include more local historical content so that this generation that's coming up will know exactly, where we came from, sort of so that we will know where we're going in sort of that context?
I think it is not so much a lack of content in the curriculum as it is an attempt to focus what is already there and to highlight it. So I have asked the staff of the ministry to come up with a patriotism policy, pulling together all the things that are already done in the syllabus and with a focus on how do we promote patriotism in our country. And so they are working on that now. By early October, I should have a draft of that. And it will include things that are already done, but it also will include things that are there but observed mainly in the breach. So some simple things like a school must start with singing the anthem or playing the anthem, and students must be taught some of our national songs. They must say the pledge every day. These are things that have been circularized many, many years ago, but they have not necessarily been observed in all schools. So it is a bringing back of what we would have done in the past and also looking specifically at pulling together what parts of the curriculum speak to patriotism, ensuring that that is done. What parts of school practice and operation speak to the inculcation of patriotism and nationalism, cultural heritage and cultural identity. So and cultural confidence, as a matter of fact. So we are pulling together a policy, and that will identify if there are gaps. And where there are gaps, we will take means to address that. But certainly in the music program as well, the primary school music program, which we are going to cabinet to have approved soon as well. And that's part of what we intend to get started back. It fell off, of course, during COVID, but we get started back. And that is also another avenue by which we can, inculcate the cultural confidence in our young citizens. So that patriotism policy, that primary school music program, that's something to look forward to during this academic year, and we'll be working very assiduously on getting those things implemented.
Nice. I think that's a positive step. A lot of people will be looking forward to that. Now, Minister, I heard the primary school, I heard the secondary school, and of course we had the adjustment of the gate criteria for the university students. But I'm not hearing much about the ECCE schools. Do you have any plans for this coming up in the new fiscal year?
The plans for the ECC would be to ensure we do have some ECC schools that are opening this year. We're able to open about 3 or 4 of the ECCE centers that had not previously operated. And so the plan for the ECC area is to increase the capacity of the schools that we have, the public schools. What we have noticed is that with the COVID-19 downturn, there's been a lot of demand for the public ECCE schools. Of course, those are the free ones. And so to increase the capacity there, it would mean that we have to maximize the teaching staff, so that, because of course, at ECCE level, there's a very strict adherence to the ratios of teacher to student. So we have to have enough teachers to engage enough students so that we can increase the capacity. So that would be one of the main areas of focus, increasing capacity so that we can accommodate more students into the public ECCE system.
Right. And Minister, finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on the injunction that was filed against Tutor with their protest action, more so the fact that they may plan more protest action as wage negotiations continue. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
The fact is, and I'm not going to speak too much about it because this is really the Attorney General Administrative Labor's realm, but I don't think we are not understanding the fact that the negotiations, everybody has a position with respect to the negotiations, but there are reasons why teachers are classed as essential workers. And so therefore, the action that was taken really is just a part of the law. And that was all that was happened. The law was enforced. And as we go forward, we look forward to the amicable resolution of this situation. In negotiation periods, these things are par for the course. And so we look forward to this being resolved, because I can tell you at the end of it, and at the crux of the matter, would be the students who have this level of uncertainty. And that is something that we don't want to encourage, because they've been through a very difficult time with COVID. We've seen the results of that. So we want them to really settle down and settle in. So I look forward to the amicable resolution of the negotiations that are taking place now, that we can really get down to the business of teaching and learning.
Right. Well, Dr. Gadsby-Dolly, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Now Morning Show. And we look forward to the debate, the budget debate, when it begins in Parliament. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
You too. And that was Education Minister Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly just giving a general overview about the budget allocation. Remember, they were given the biggest chunk of the pie, 7.54, is it? $7.45 billion they were given for their budget. And the minister was talking about things like digital transformation. I love the patriotic part as well that she mentioned in terms of having that patriotism policy. And so we look forward to see how that is going to unfold within the next fiscal year. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. Stay with us.
Education, education, this is the foundation. Our rising